Hello everyone, this is Kira, and welcome to a new Elden Ring walkthrough I'm doing in 2025 that I'm calling a bite-sized walkthrough. So the idea is that the episodes are going to be very short in length, typically cover no more than, say, one dungeon or one ruin or one location, or introduce you to one new system. I'll talk about one specific thing. The idea is that I'm going to assume you're a total beginner to Elden Ring, you're really overwhelmed, and you want this game explained to you very slowly and in easily digestible chunks. So if that appeals to you, uh, keep watching. In addition, this walkthrough is going to be a lore-based walkthrough, so we're going to make sure you don't miss any lore interactions. It's also going to be a full 100% walkthrough. You're going to walk out of this with a full platinum of the game. So you're gonna get everything, all the achievements, all of the items that you can pick up in the world, all of the gestures, etc. So let's get started. In this episode, we're only concerning ourselves with character creation. I'm going to talk about the basics of that. So you start off with an option to pick a starting class. Now, in this game, all a starting class is if you think of it like Dungeons and Dragons, it's just how your attributes are allocated. There's nothing more to it than that. So you're not locked into anything. You can even unlock respecking later in the game to completely change your attributes if you don't like, how you have them allocated. So that's all these things do. They determine some starting equipment and basic attributes. And I'm going to hit triangle here to show attributes so you can see what each of these starting classes offers. So vigor is basically like your health stat. So the higher your vigor, the more hit points you have. Mind is kind of like mana. It's for spell casting and incantations. The more mind you have, the more FP you have. So those are the points that are used for casting spells. So that's like your mana. You'll hear me talk about it. I'll often forget to say FP and say mana instead. That's what I mean. It's like the equivalent to hit points for health. That's your pool of points for casting spells. Endurance is stamina. So in this game, using your weapon attacks or jumping, dodging, sprinting, all of those things consume stamina. Blocking consumes stamina. So the higher your endurance, the more stamina you have. In addition, the more endurance you have, the more you can equip. So there's a concept in this game of equip load, where you can be very lightly loaded down with armor or very heavily loaded down with armor. And the difference is mobility, essentially. Like if you're super lightly loaded, you can roll great distances and you're very agile. Whereas if you're very tanky and, weighed down with very heavy armor, you won't be able to roll at all. Your roll won't go very far. But there might be advantages to it, and that you might want to be super heavily armored, for example. The rest of the stats are all basically damage stats, and they're kind of just determining your play style. So strength is like you want to wield big two-handed swords and hammers and clubs and axes, and it's big bonk weapons. So if that playstyle appeals to you, for example, the hero would be a good choice because they just straight up have a super high strength, to start with. Dexterity is like fast, agile, rapiers, katanas, that kind of thing. So if you want to be fast, agile, lightly armored, etc., uh, you would do dexterity. So for example, the samurai, is a good choice for dexterity. Bandit also is pretty good. So we could get into that. Dexterity often pairs with arcane, so that makes bandit a good choice. Arcane is a damage stat that affects status buildups. So for example, with dex, you often have weapons that inflict something called bleed. So that means that you're basically building up this blood loss on an enemy, and then when it fills up, their blood loss meter fills up, they take a big chunk of damage all at once. And arcane makes that build up faster. So that's the advantage of, say, being a dex arcane build. Intelligence is for basically playing a pure sorcerer or a mage, so you're just going to cast spells. There are glintstone sorceries, there are magma sorceries, there are death sorceries, there's all sorts of different schools of magic. The class that you would probably pick if you wanted to start as a pure mage would simply be the astrologer. You can see they start off with a high intelligence and a staff and some spells. Faith is like a priest, pure holy damage, that kind of thing, holy casting heals. That's the faith stat. So you can see that the prophet is your sort of pure faith starter class. And then we already covered arcane. And then in addition, you could play things that are like a hybrid. So for example, strength faith. Here's the confessor. That's more of a martial. They use the holy spells, but they also wield the weapons. So that's kind of like a more traditional D&D cleric. So strength faith. In this playthrough, we're actually going to go with int faith. Paradoxically, the weapon that I want to use for my playthrough for this int faith actually involves needing to have strength and dex requirements. So I'm just going to start with the Vagabond, and this is also going to give me an opportunity to show you how melee and sort of swords and basic weapons work by picking Vagabond over the Mage, and then I'll be able to talk about spellcasting later as we get our first staff. So my plan is to pick the Vagabond. This would also be, the Vagabond is also a very good choice if you want to play something called a quality build. So quality is a slang term that essentially means you're playing with both strength and dexterity. One of the things that's really nice about a quality build is it has access to a lot more weapons because you're raising both strength and dexterity, so you'll tend to meet the minimum requirements for weapons pretty easily, and it lets you just play around with a lot of things. So on your very first playthrough, it's a very solid choice. So I'm going to enter my name here. And keepsake is you have a bunch of options. This is basically an item you get to start with. So you could start with this item, but you'll be able to acquire this item in the course of playing the game. This is just lets you start with more levels, which we don't really need. I'm gonna show you ways to level up. Nothing here is essential, right? You can get all of these things in game. I personally like picking the Golden Seed because you have a set number of healing flasks in this game, and as you explore the world, you acquire Golden Seeds, which lets you have even more healing flasks. By starting with a Golden Seed, you'll begin with one extra healing flask, so I think that's a really good starter option. Another good option is a Stone Sword Key. Stone Sword Keys are used to unlock things. They're basically these sort of imp statues, and you put the key in, and it unlocks a mist wall, and lets you get past it to get into something. So they're good for unlocking dungeons and stuff like that, but we're going to acquire plenty during the course of our playthrough. So my feeling is that Golden Seed is the best starter. Now I have an appearance already saved. You can actually put appearances in a favorites list and then load them back, so that way you don't have to sit here and watch me, tweak a bunch of sliders. So you can see this is what I've picked as my character. Alright, we're going to say finish, and then we're going to enjoy the opening cutscene.
The fallen leaves tell a story. The great Elden Ring was shattered. In our home, across the fog, the lands between. Now, Queen Marika the Eternal is nowhere to be found. And in the night of the Black Knives, Godwyn the Golden was first to perish. Soon, Marika's offspring, demigods all, claimed the shards of the Elden Ring. the mad taint of their newfound strength triggered the shattering. A war from which no lord arose. A war leading to abandonment by the greater will. Oh, rise now, ye tarnished, ye dead who yet live. The call of long-lost grace speaks to us all. Horalu, chieftain of the Badlands, the ever-brilliant Gold Mask. Fear, the deathbed companion, the loathsome dung-eater, and Sir Gideon Ofnir, the all-knowing. And one other, whom grace would again bless.
That's us.
A tarnished of no renown. Cross the fog to the lands between. To stand before the Elden Ring and become the Elden Lord.
So we begin in this chapel. If you did pre-order the games, you would get these gestures, the Ring and the Ring of Miquella, once for the DLC and once for the regular game. So this has pretty standard controls in terms of movement and camera. The left stick is how you move, and the right stick pans the camera. You will see these glowing messages on the ground. You can read them. These are messages that most of the time are left by other players, but occasionally the game itself uses messages to deliver information to you. Like, for example, there's a message up there that's not from a player, but from the game. And you can actually, appraisals is like upvotes, so you can actually say that a message was good. So I can applaud this message to praise the Elden Ring, and now it's got 5 upvotes. Now you may notice I'm fat rolling to start the game. When you hit circle to roll and you kind of feel your controller shake and you barely move, that's how you know you're overloaded. So you can actually come into equipment, which is by hitting the button next to your, triangle, square, circle, X, the little button above those. And we could take something off. I like to show what my character looks like, so I'll take off my helmet, see if that's enough. That was enough to fix it, so now you can see I'm rolling okay. And I get to look at my character. So if you come over here, you can see there's a message and an object. Loot in the world will have that big glowing, it'll glow the color of the loot. So like purple is like items, important items. There's also kind of white for just normal items, and then legendary items are kind of an orange glow. If you read the message, it says, though the path be broken and uncertain, claim your place as Elden Lord. So that's our plan, to become Elden Lord. You can see this is a dead finger maiden. We'll find out more about what maidens are as we keep playing. But there's kind of a whole story to be told here. She's dead. There's this interesting giant hole torn in the chapel roof. And we're about to go get killed by something out here, which a lot of people speculate is what killed her. Tarnished, which is what we are, tend to have finger maidens, but we don't have one. We're maidenless, which you'll find out here in a bit. And there is speculation that this is actually our maiden who was killed, and that's why we're maidenless. That's why we begin the game next to her. So there's a whole kind of story here, speculative story to work out. Bloodstains on the floor can be touched, and they show you how another player died. So hilariously, you'll see that many players, many players, just ran off the edge. Let's see what they do. Yep. So these can be hugely entertaining. And I always talk about the bloodstain of shame. Like, if you die doing something, you've left your bloodstain of shame for someone else to see how you messed up. You'll see that this message, which has been upvoted 7 times, says to try jumping. So messages are often trying to troll you or trick you, unfortunately. So it's just something to be aware of. So when we come down here, across this bridge, you can see that people have left messages on the bridge. Let there be friendship. Oh, that one has a lot of upvotes. First off, death. They are actually being truthful with that message. Up ahead here is our first boss fight. And if you haven't played a lot of games by FromSoft, what they like to do is hit you with a boss that's unbeatable that kills you at the beginning, so that people who are just god gamers can show off their skills and actually beat the boss at level 1 with no heals and so on. So you're welcome to try. But if you are in fact here, you're probably a beginner looking for help. And don't be discouraged. This thing's going to kill you, and that's fine. If you want to try to swing, R1 is how you swing. You can try to block with your shield by holding down L1. So you can see that we blocked. We can see he just shrieked and nearly killed, took off all our health. So you can see we're killed. That's fine.
Don't worry, Torrent. Fortune is on her side. We found her here after all. One of her kind is sure to seek the Elden Ring. Even if it does violate the Golden Order.
Ominous. So now we've been given our healing flask, and we also have flasks that restore FP, or mana, what we would use to cast spells. This particular starting class that I chose, we don't have any spells. We're purely kind of a martial class. Down below is the tutorial section, which we're going to cover in the next episode. Really quickly, I wanted to show you your flasks. If you hit the down arrow, you can switch between your healing flask, which is red, and your mana flask, which is blue. This corresponds to the colors of your bars. You can hit triangle to kind of make your UI show. So you see how I hit triangle, and now you can see in the upper left there's a red bar, that's your health, a blue bar, that's your mana or FP, and in the green bar is your stamina. You can see when you're out of combat, things like rolling, like with circle, or sprinting by holding circle, don't consume stamina, but once you're in combat, those things will eat stamina up. So in order to jump down here, there's a ledge if you want to avoid taking damage. If you did end up taking damage, you can use an item, which the game just told you by hitting triangle, or sorry, by hitting square. So hitting square would use a flask, so just to show that. But see how I have a limited number? Now my 3 went down to 2. If I did it again, it'll go down to 1. If I did it again, now you can see I'm out. Just completely out, and nothing will happen. So how do you recharge those flasks? So the answer is that you have to rest. And to do that, you have to find Sites of Grace. Sites of Grace are also act as fast travel points. So you can jump to a Site of Grace by just bringing up your world map and going to that grace, specific grace. When you rest, all of your stuff will come back. In addition, what we can do is, because we started with a golden seed, you see this little pip by the flasks? That's telling us that we have a golden seed and we can add a charge to our flask. So that means we'll have an extra flask use, which is why I like starting with that. It's just a nice thing to start with. And this is actually where we'll stop. In the next episode, we will make our way through the tutorial cave, and then out into Limgrave to end the next episode. So until next time.